Let's welcome in Brian Geltzeiler, SiriusXM NBA radio host, also a contributor at NBA TV. What's up, Brian? How you doing, man?
Good, guys. How we doing?
We're doing well. I'll just let you in on kind of what Evan and I were talking about during the break, and I was just thinking about the Warriors and Steph Curry, and I said, it's not that Steph Curry is noticeably slipping, but I feel like he right now, in a weird way, is being asked to do so much because there's never been this big a disparity between him and the second best player on the team. I'm watching this game last night, and Portland's got a guy coming out, and right off the bat is just hanging on Steph Curry left and right, up and down the floor, and I'm thinking, man, they can focus on him almost more than ever now.
I agree. I don't think he's slipping much. I think he's still doing everything he's done off the ball. He's still carrying an enormous load. I just think you're right. Listen, there's no second banana. There's zero. There's not a second banana on this team offensively. And it's making it much harder on him. And frankly, the smart defensive strategy is to load up on him and let other guys shoot and take your chances. And let's face it, taking your chances on that has been a really good strategy to beat the Warriors. The other issue that they have, that's a non-Steph Curry issue, is that they're not big. And when you look around the league at the teams that are having success, the more athletic quality size you have, the better off you are. Yeah. I mean, look at the Minnesota's top of the conference right now. Look at the amount of size they roll at you. Denver won the championship last year. Look at the amount of size they roll at you. The Lakers are playing tonight in the semis of the in-season tournament and have crawled their way into the 4 seed in the Western Conference. Look at the size they bring at you with Anthony Davis. Like, you need big players out there. Even you want to take a team like Dallas, who drafted Derek Lively with the number 11 pick in this year's draft, number 10 pick, wherever they took Lively. He's starting and playing meaningful minutes for them and playing really well, and the dude's 7-1. Like, you need big players, and the Warriors have survived for years playing smaller lineups as their best lineups, but I think the league's evolving in a way that the Warriors aren't, and I think that's kind of outliving its usefulness a little bit.
Well, Brian, speaking of that kind of puzzle that Steve Kerr now is being asked to piece together, you're talking about length, athleticism, and while the Warriors don't have it in abundance, the majority of which kind of has been, by some people's estimation, suppressed a bit. The Moses Moody's, the Jonathan Kumingas we finally saw last night come in and essentially save the Warriors against a Portland team that was kind of running them off the floor. I mean, do you think that these athletic and long players that the Warriors do have deserve to play more? And if so, does that demand Steve Kerr to do something with the starting lineup, something that he kind of referenced after the game last night?
All right, so listen, the starting lineup thing, I have always believed there's too much put into that because he can rotate minutes in a way that he wants to rotate minutes. And I know when Kerr spoke about that last night, there's speculation about 2 guys potentially coming out of the starting lineup. One is Andrew Wiggins and one is Klay Thompson. I would be floored and shocked, let me get it out of the way, if he's going to pull Klay Thompson out of the starting lineup. It would be very hard for me to... First of all, it'd be hard I can't believe he's going to do it, and I wouldn't do it if I were him either. And then the second part is that I don't know how you sell that to Klay in a contract year at this stage of his career when he's struggling like this. Right now, Klay needs to have confidence shown in him, and that's not a way to help. Wiggins is a little bit different because, listen, Wiggins, in some ways, almost made a mistake. They won the title because he showed us everything he could be. He showed us how amazing he can be when he's in shape, the kind of defense he can play, the force he can be offensively, the rebounder he can be. He's not in shape. He's obviously not doing a lot of work off the court. They were very understanding with him last year when he had a personal family problem that prevented him from playing in a big chunk of time. He hasn't gotten himself back there. He's been here pretty much the whole year, and we're not seeing a guy in any kind of decent condition here. And maybe it is Wiggins, but I will tell you, I don't know that you have to change the starting lineup, and you can take more advantage of this bench. And this is the hard part for the Warriors. If you had told me going into this season that this bench would have played as well as it's played, I mean, Dario Saric has been a revelation. He's been really, really good for the Warriors. I didn't think Podziemski would be able to contribute this year. He certainly has had games where he's been a major contributor. Kuminga's had more weak ones than strong ones, but Moody's had more strong ones than weak ones. So, like, the bench has been pretty consistent. If you told me the bench would be this consistent, I wouldn't believe the Warriors are below 500. But here we are. But here's my point. I don't know that Steve Kerr needs to make this about who starts as much as he needs to make this about who finishes. And that's got to be, he made a substitution error last week in taking Moody out of a game who can't be making those kinds of errors. Who finishes the games matters a heck of a lot more. And it allows Kerr the luxury of saying, hey, who's got it tonight and who doesn't? And really, frankly, short of Curry and Draymond, anyone else should be eligible to be sat down the stretch of a game, including Klay Thompson. If Thompson's struggling, he shouldn't be on the floor late in games. Curry and Green you must finish games with because of how they complement each other, because of what one means to the offense and one means to the defense. All that's fine. The other three spots up for grabs, guys, to be able to finish games. Forget about who starts. Let's watch who finishes.
Brian Geltzeiler joining us on 95.7 The Game, Sirius XM NBA radio host, also contributor at NBA TV. You know, it's funny you brought up Klay Thompson, and there's so much going on with the team. You know, I just think that one of the challenges the Warriors are going to have this year and are having is that Klay Thompson may have to take a reduced role, but he's also in a contract year, and how can you ask him to do that and this, that, and the other thing? And I actually thought the only way you can ask Klay Thompson to go to the bench is hand him a contract extension on the same day. You know, and I know that's unrealistic, but that's kind of what you almost would have to worry about, because he's a delicate situation because he's so revered.
Matt, you may ask him to go to the bench and hand him a contract extension on the same day, and he may hand you back the contract.
True. No doubt.
Wow. Because that is who he is. This is about, for Klay, listen, I bring up contract year, and yes, he wants to be paid, and he's not going to get the same money that he's making, but he wants to be paid pretty well. Draymond got an extension and is being paid pretty well, and I'm sure Klay would accept that kind of money. I'm not sure he's worth that kind of money right now, but he would accept that kind of money. This is a little bit deeper for Klay Thompson. It's almost an existential crisis as a basketball player. This is about professional pride. This is about the fact that people continue to say he's not the guy he once was. He isn't the guy he once was. He doesn't want to believe it, and it's almost like the harder he tries to be the best player that he could possibly be here, the more he presses, the worse he looks. I mean, he's shooting 34% from three. That's not Klay Thompson. 39% from the field overall. That's not Klay Thompson. And listen, guys, we all understand this. He was never going to come back from those two injuries and be the same defensive player he was. He just wasn't going to have the lateral movement to do it. It's something that you can accept. It's something that you put in place infrastructure-wise, where you're supposed to have Wiggins there to cover a lot of those difficult matchups that, quite frankly, Wiggins isn't doing such a good job of. And now you have Moody, who guards pretty well and can take some of those matchups. So you shouldn't have to worry about the fact that Klay's not the same defender that he is. This is a whole crisis having to do with Klay Thompson, the offensive player. Klay Thompson, the splash brother, that isn't splashing much right now. And I do think Kerr's going to have to be patient with him. I think nights like last night where he's playing 27 minutes instead of playing, in upwards of 34 minutes and what he's played in the past in his career. I mean, he's averaging 29.7 on the year. Kerr played him 26 last night. I think you're going to have to play him 25 to 27 minutes right now, kind of where he played him last night, until he starts to shoot himself out of this. You can't tell him to stop shooting the ball, because otherwise you might as well not play him at all. I mean, he's got to take open shots when he has them. But I also will tell you this. In watching Klay Thompson, I'm curious to get what you guys think about this. He's taken more bad shots this year than I've ever seen him take. And that's a sign that he's pressing. He's not letting the game come to him. He's trying to go out and take too many games by the throat, and he's not doing it successfully. Now, maybe he's not moving as well off the ball as he once did and not getting as open. That could be a factor. But I would like to see him take more good shots, less bad shots. And even if he's taking a few less shots out there, I just want his shot quality to improve. I mean, his shot selection has not been good, and I think that comes down to what's happening between his ears and all the pressing that he's doing out there, because he's feeling a ton of pressure.
Yeah, no, Brian, I completely agree. And I also think, too, some of that is the open shots that he does have, he's just not making at a high enough clip. So the ones that he's taking that look bad or that are bad choices are even more glaring. I also wonder, in talking about what the Warriors can do, not necessarily with the starting lineup, but with their rotation. And Steve Kerr has discussed, and really it looks difficult sometimes for those decisions to be made of who deserves to play on what given night, how to ride the hot hand. It's less clear than it's ever been in Golden State of who needs to play more on a given night. But from that perspective, do you feel like the Warriors' issues are more correctable internally, or do you think there's something external that needs to happen, a potential move, a trade, and that involves Mike Dunleavy Jr.?
Listen, it depends upon what's available, and that's going to be the important part of all this. And I say that in this way. If you could go out and bring a Pascal Siakam in and have it ultimately be for the Chris Paul contract would have to go in a situation like that. Paul, one of your young players and maybe a future pick, if you can get him at the right price, that's a guy you have to go out and get, but you can't trade for trade's sake. So to answer your question, Evan, I think it is solvable internally. I just think Steve Kerr's going to have a challenge on his hands that he's got to be prepared for, that he's never really had to deal with. Kerr's always known who his best players were night to night for the most part. He doesn't know that anymore. He's got two guys he can count on, Curry and Green, and that's it. He has to wing it with the other three spots depending upon who's playing well and try to start riding hot hands and who's in the right matchups. And it's challenging. You're not always going to make decisions. And listen, last week when he took Moody out of the game, Wiggins and Thompson in the game, and ends up getting killed for that move, that was Kerr being a creature of habit. So I will say this, he's got to change the way he does things. Now, to your point, maybe bringing somebody in from the outside, another player, is going to force him to make some of those changes in how he operates here. But I think, listen, I will say this right now. Kerr, as one of the great strengths of this Warriors dynasty, has been Steve Kerr's relationship with these three star players. And I actually think with the way that Thompson is playing, and even with the way other guys are struggling here, Wiggins, Looney, he's reduced Looney's minutes here, who hasn't looked as good as he has in the past. Okay, with that stuff, Kerr's reverting back to old habits with these guys, and they're not playing the same way. I actually think some of those relationships are more damaging right now because Kerr's accomplished so much, counts on these guys so much, and thinks so much of them and trusts them, where some of the trust is misplaced now. And I'm not killing Steve Kerr on this, that's a really hard thing to undo. So getting back to Evan's initial point, could the problem be outside the organization? Only if it's the right kind of player that you're bringing in to solve this. A guy that ends up being somebody that can be a third banana with Curry and Green, or a second offensive option. If you're not going to get a second offensive option, you might as well not make a trade.
Brian, man, great stuff as always. Really appreciate it, and love talking to you, my man.
Always my pleasure, guys. Please reach out anytime. Always happy to do it. You both take care.
All right, that's Brian Geltzeiler, Sirius XM NBA radio host, and also a contributor at NBA TV.